Welcome to another episode of the SpeakEZ Podcast, powered by HireEZ and the Outbound Recruiting Academy. I am so excited to have our special guest, Mike Wolford. With over 18 years in revolutionizing the talent acquisition landscape, Mike has solidified his position as a leader in the field. What sets Mike apart is his seamless integration of advanced AI technologies in talent acquisition, positioning him at the forefront of recruitment innovation. As the author of Amazon's bestseller, The AI Recruiter, and the influential articles like 6 Ways to Use GPT-4 for Recruiting, Mike consistently provides valuable insights to the talent acquisition community. We are so lucky to have him join us today. So without further ado, welcome to the SpeakEZ Podcast, Mike.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you. I'm like, who is this guy?
What initially sparked your interest and how that evolution went from recruiting focused more on the newest technologies like AI?
Right. So, like everyone else, I thought about being a recruiter when I was a kid and just always dreamed of doing it. I got into agency after running my own business coming out of college. And I remember being in the interview and he's like, we work 60 hours a week, like in staffing. It's a lot. And I was like, only 60 hours? This is great. It's a break from running my own business. So that's how I came into recruiting. I was an agency recruiter. I was given a filing cabinet and a login to Monster, and I got started. Um, After that, what happened to me was I really started to enjoy the job. I enjoyed not the fact that we were necessarily in it to help people, but that at the end of the day, when I had done my job, the candidate had a better position. The client had the person that they needed, and I got paid to make that happen. And I felt like if you're going to do work, that's pretty good work to be doing. I can't cure cancer. I'm not that smart. I can't invent a longer lasting light bulb. I'm not an engineer, but this is something I can do and I can use my talents here. So I started early on at really finding satisfaction in the work. And then I started to want to learn how to do it better. And I was looking at like the Fordyce letter and ERE and the stuff that existed back then and trying to figure out how to get better. I started to go to conferences. I started to learn more about how this field works. I became a recruiter. I became a sourcer. I became a recruiting manager, sourcing manager, and just pulled me down the path as I continued to learn more and more. And what I didn't see was how do I do all these things? And so that's what started me writing at SourceCon and with Recruiting Daily was I would read an article that would say, candidate experience is important. I'd be like, I agree. Can you please tell me what are some of the things I need to be doing to make that happen? And just don't tell me it needs to happen. And so I felt like there was a lack of like tactical, this is step one, step two, step three. Here's how you actually do this job. And that's what I have turned my career into. And that's what's pulled me along and gotten me into technology. I got into sourcing because sourcers typically got the technology first. We had the least amount of paperwork and the most amount of interaction with candidates and technology. All of the technology that was being developed in the mid-teens when I was in sourcing were sourcing tools. And so that's where I wanted to be. And around 2018, 19, we started to hear about AI. We had some early entrants into the market, but it really wasn't until probably December of 2023 as I'm getting into analytics and I'm trying to understand the big picture, because at this point I've been a recruiting manager, a sourcing manager. I've been in the meetings. I understand what talent acquisition gets asked for and what we don't have. And what we didn't have are two things. And these are still two things that I think we need. This is kind of my passion going forward is one, we need to become data driven. We need to understand how to speak to the business in their terms, and that's data. And so we need to understand ROI, IRR. We need to understand, right? Like we get hit with the ROI club all the time. Well, there's this IRR thing we can pull up too, right? That we're not educated enough businessly, and the CFO knows that. And so they're able to beat us over the head with ROI. And that's not the only measure of a good investment. This is the type of thing that we need. Business acumen powered by data. Unemployment is at record lows right now. Why are we letting our recruiters grow? We have high labor participation rate, high demand for labor, low unemployment. This is not the time for layoffs. This is the
For
time to
sure.
hold on to everybody we have, right? We need to know that. The other thing we need to know is how to get the AI to do the things um, that it can do for us that will give us back the time so we can do that job, so that we can be in the room. Because if you're too busy scheduling interviews to be in the room, then the decision gets made without your information, and that affects you. And it's affected us as an industry.
Was there an aha moment of saying the future is AI? I need to be on the forefront because I consider you as the AI recruiting godfather.
Yeah. There's a good question. There was two really. The first one was I keep track of it, and I found an expert online through my YouTube, and a guy named Dr. Alan Thompson, and he's a former head of Mensa. He's a Harvard certified coach. He's a PhD. His expertise is intelligence. Well, I stumbled upon one of his videos where he was interviewing an AI, and he animated the text conversation, which nobody was doing then. But the technology was even then, at 2.5 and 3, was capable of fairly sophisticated conversation. And though you could tell he was talking to an AI, it was pretty good. And he didn't like hype it, and he didn't downplay it. He just reacted to it as it was. And if it said something wrong, he'd be like, I don't think so. I think that's wrong. Or you're being negative, right? Like he came across as a fair actor. But when I saw that it was able to have a conversation back and forth, and he asked sophisticated philosophical questions, he asked it to right. That was my first like, oh wow, this is actually different. And then the second was when I got my hands on GPT-4 for the first time, because I had 3.5 and I'd used it, and you can use it and people use it all the time. It's fine. It's a good model. But when I got my hands on 4.0, for me as a writer, that was the moment, because my analogy may be a little crude here, but like ChatGPT 3.5 kind of reminds me of a college freshman on Adderall. Like it's good, does the job, it's fast, it's passable work, it's college work, good old college try. GPT-4 is like an English lit professor. It is just categorically a better writer. And you know what? To me, that's really annoying, to be honest, because I like writing. I have been a professional writer, writing professionally for years, and I take a lot of pride in my work. But the AI is just a better writer. It doesn't make grammar mistakes. It doesn't make typos. When I was going to publish the book, my editor was a little annoyed because he's like, there's nothing for me to edit. I mean, there's some choices you can make that might be different. The only thing that was wrong were the grammar errors in my prompts to tell the computer what to do. The content itself was flawless grammatically. And so, I think the lesson for me was I'm a ADHD kind of writer. Like it takes me a week to write an article, and I was able to get the content out for the AI recruiter in just over 2 weeks from a blank page. And, I kept all the prompts that I used to get the content out, because to me, this has always been the point. How do you actually get this thing to do all these amazing things that everybody says? And how do you get the type of results that are consistently going to help you? And so that's what the book was about. And that's kind of what has drawn me through my career, has been, especially when it comes to speaking to the community, is I appreciate the strategy, and there is a lot of business acumen out there that we need to pick up. But I don't see a lot of people saying this is how we actually, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. And my hope is to be a voice for that, to show people, because if we don't, someone else will. And what I've learned in this process, and what draws me to this technology, and why I'm so passionate about speaking about it, is I've learned there's two things you need to make these things successful. One, you need to tell it what to do, which is what almost everybody's getting really good at, prompt engineering. Two, I almost want to call it example engineering. This is, here, I want you to write an email. Here's an example of a good email. I want you to write an opening line that starts with a question or an interesting fact. Here's a sentence that starts with an interesting fact. Here's a good sentence that starts with a question. We need to learn how to build and customize now our own tools. And for the very first time ever, kind of at scale, we have the capability to build tools for us to do what we need to do in our day-to-day work. And so long answer to your question, but this is what pulls me forward is we need to adapt to this so that the AI can handle the work it can handle so we can be free finally to be the advocate for our candidates and the advisor to our clients. Because that's the job I think we all want.
How do you foresee AI technologies such as ChatGPT and there's other new AI technologies within recruiting shaping the recruitment process in the next decade?
It will be completely different. One of the things that interested me and I noticed early on was laws were being passed about AI deciding no on a candidate or on anything really, a credit application even. Totally understand you want human supervision of final decisions that impact people's lives. I'm on board. I agree. But there's no law anywhere that says an AI can't tell somebody yes. And so that is what is the future in my mind, because the other thing about business acumen is I've come to understand, even when you work for a company that's seemingly very progressive and not about money, if they're a for-profit company, they're for money. They put it on the door. I learned that at Twitter. Right? Uh, they're going to do whatever's in the best interest of the company, and that means money. And when it comes to corporate America and really any corporation for profit anywhere in the world, if they can have something that's 80% of the good, 20% of the cost, they're going to say yes to that every time. That's what actually disruption is. Disruption doesn't mean you replace it with something better necessarily. It just means you got rid of what was there. And this is what's happening with AI. AI drops the cost dramatically to do a lot of things. So for us, it's in our best interest to learn to use the tools that will automate the work that can be and should be automated, right? AI is actually even I've fought against spam for years. I hate spam. I just wrote about spam again. It makes my blood boil that we do this. Like, I'm actually kind of relieved now that AI is going to take over writing because candidates won't be bombarded with our terrible, I hope this email finds you well. I mean, they will, but right. Oh, I found your resume. It's the perfect profile ever. You're the coolest person ever. I'm such a recruiter. Here's the job description, like to 800 people simultaneously, right? Like that nonsense is going to come to an end, I think, for once, and let the AI handle the customized outreach. Maybe that's what it takes. The other thing I'm excited about, and I think we should embrace is actually screening technologies. As recruiters and as a candidate right now, having applied to jobs myself, the candidate black hole is real. Like too many of us are on the job market right now to forget about the candidate black hole. What screening technology allows you to do is it allows anybody who wants a chance to interview to get one. And that is not something as human recruiters we can offer. We physically, I mean, when I spoke about Capital One, when I was there, I was a recruiter. I had 60 open jobs as a tech recruiter, and I would get hundreds of applications to each job. And like, there was just no human possible way I could even read all those resumes, much less contact all those people. An AI phone screener, an AI video, whatever screener could talk to 500 candidates at once. And it can ask fair interview questions and give everybody the same questions in the same order, effectively the same tone, right? As equality, it's not equal, right? But it's as close to fair as we can make it. So from the candidate perspective, that's an increase in benefit and experience. From our perspective, when candidate number application 183 is a 95% match, they don't get buried in the heap anymore.
Sure.
And so that's a win for us. And this is what I think as recruiters and sourcers and TA leaders and TI leaders, we need to think about. It's not just about us. We need the win for everybody. And these technologies can do that. They can give us the win. They can make us more efficient. They can make us better. They can make the candidate experience better. And then not only like, I know we're afraid of giving up controls. I remember I had a team had a hard time adapting Calendly, right? Like they didn't want to give up control of their calendar. Like you really love the back and forth, the phone screen scheduling. Like, is that just a pat? But no, it was about control. And so we have to let go of a lot of the stuff that we feel like we alone can do to focus on the stuff that really we alone should do.
Sure.
And that is one thing I remember coming up through agency was we had to prep our candidates before an interview. It was a checklist item. If you sent your candidate to an interview without prepping them, you were going to get talked to. Like, it's just not acceptable. And we're so busy sending emails and follow-ups and drip campaigns and report that we don't prep our candidates anymore. As a recruiter, as a sourcer, as a TA professional, when you get your hands on these tools, don't only just say, here's how we implement them, say, here's how we get the time back to recruiters to value add. Number one, the number one thing you should be doing if you're a practitioner with the time you get back from your AI is you should prep your candidates for the interview. You can use the AI to create a candidate interview prep guide in star format. It'll do it for you in seconds. There's no excuse anymore for us not to prepare our candidates for an interview. We're totally empowered with AI to do that. GPT could do it. Gemini can do it. Any of the major LLMs can do it. Take the resume, take the job description, and ask it to create you a candidate interview prep guide with answers in star format. It will do
I
it in seconds.
I love that because typically when we talk about in recruiting and utilizing AI, it's all about the outreach. And that's the only use case that people are utilizing it. But you're taking it the next step further and you're coming up with a solution of taking how much time do we take at this specific area and how can we eliminate that time consumption in order to put focus on somewhere else that really makes an impact. In my career in recruiting, sometimes the most qualified person didn't get the job. It was the one that was prepared the most going into those conversations. So if you're looking to streamline the process, increase those offer interview percentages, it might be worth it of utilizing some of that AI ChatGPT in the back end of increasing your percentages of interview loop
Right.
to offer ratio, which is amazing.
And
The last role you had was, the vice president of AI and analytics. Now you're doing some consulting. What is the biggest pushback on companies currently right now of not wanting to utilize AI and the analytics and all the technology that we have at hand within the recruiting process? What are some of the major
yeah.
pushbacks, barriers of adoption?
So thanks. That's a great question. The first barrier is lack of understanding. Like, people just generally don't understand what it is they're dealing with, and that creates a level of distrust. It is hard to just trust something that you can't really comprehend what it is or what it's doing. AI is a term that's been thrown around a lot, and it's now overused and it's everywhere, and it's kind of lost its meaning. So what we need to talk about is being a little more precise when we're talking about LLMs as part of AI, AGI and all. But the thing is, it is confusing, and this is brand new territory for all of us. So don't feel bad. But the first thing, I think the first barrier is really understanding. People are comfortable talking to it, writing an email with it. But beyond that, because they don't really understand it, they're not really going to trust it too much further. The second thing from a business perspective is the training data. Um, Companies do not want LLMs to train on their data. OpenAI is really the first one I've seen commercially to come after this market and address it with a enterprise version that is explicitly not training on your data. It makes sense for them from a business perspective. Azure AI now is that option internally. We had that at Wilson specifically because it would not train on our data. So that's a barrier to adoption. And then, the third one would be use cases. They don't know what to do with it beyond writing an email. And this is actually the thing that's going to change in the next year. The first year and a half of AI's real presence in the market has been individual users. But what's been happening in behind the scenes is companies are now taking these LLM capabilities and building products on top of it. So what we're seeing, and you probably see this in the market now, is co-pilots effectively for different professions. You see them for lawyers, accountants, real estate agents. This is the first wave of custom tools built on top of LLMs specifically for tasks in an industry and in an organization. This is what's all of our tools are now AI powered and AI embedded, and everything that's coming to market is built from scratch on top of an LLM and that capability. And so that has been rapidly happening kind of behind the scenes. Workday is in the news again for their acquisitions and their accelerated lean into AI and adopting it across their platform and capabilities. And this is what's going to happen now is the spidering of AI into HR in general and recruiting specifically. And it's coming at us from every direction. It's going to come at us from the HRIS system. It's coming to the ATS. It's coming to the CRM. Every single aspect, calendaring, interviewing, all of this is simultaneously now being developed. And the question is, how fast can we adopt? And it's really hard because it's so much to keep track of. But we're in a position now where technology could, I'm not saying it should or even would be better, but you can automate now a recruiting process from end to end with AI, with different AI tools. Don't feel too bad. There's an AI software engineer already now that's taking and completing work. This is where we are. And so we need to figure out how to do that automation, be the people who implement it so then we can then run it because that's what's going to happen. And then in running it, what you're doing is you're prepping the candidates for their interviews. You're going into the intake meeting with your hiring team and you're saying, here's what the market looks like. Here's how many people there are in the market for your job. There are 3 people that exist in the market who have the skills for this open job. That's the ratio of talent, supply, and demand. So after 3 interviews, we need to make a decision, 3 in-person interviews. If not, we're going to have to justify why we're going to expend more resources to outperform the market. Here's what the salary is. Here's what our top competitors are paying. Here's the skill sets in the market. And not for nothing, maybe we should get back to prepping our hiring managers for interviews too, because I know I've had hiring managers say things that were at best embarrassing and at worst potentially complicated, right? This is our area. And guess what? If they interview and they say something stupid or bad, they're going to be like, well, my recruiter didn't say it, right? Like my recruiter didn't tell me anything. So part of that relationship, of building that relationship with your clients is also teaching them and empowering them and saying like, here's some things you absolutely can't ask during an interview, but here's some good things to ask. And by the way, here's an interview feedback sheet and everybody on your team should be using this. So we're all on the same sheet, literally, right? Like this is the things that it gives us time to do, the things that humans can do, collaborate, cooperate, set up new processes, push people through that process, encourage them through that process and educate them as they're going because now you'll have the time to do it because you're not going to have to send 800 emails out to get the candidates that you need. So it's a very different job with a lot less admin work.
What challenges do organizations typically face when implementing AI-driven recruitment solutions
Yeah.
at first? And how do they overcome those and evolve utilizing it?
So I think that's a good question. There's a few things that come out first. Two things I'll right off the bat are discrimination and hallucinations. Those are 2 things that you're going to have to handle early on. There are mitigation standards. So again, for hallucination, it becomes a matter of understanding how the technology actually works. And if you say, okay, I understand that this is a risk, but if I first give it very specific instructions, second, I give it very specific examples, and third, I provide it with specific data, then the chance of hallucination is very, very manageable. It's very low. Um, from the diversity perspective and the discrimination perspective, a lot of people read an article recently that said, and it showed the map of the, how much it discriminated. Actually, that's just a reflection of how much we discriminate because it's trained on that data. But the mitigation for that is been around for a long time. Take the name off the resume, take the address off the resume, take certain information away, and the bias is reduced. this isn't only AI. This happens to us and humans when we do this, right? A lot of systems today send a blind resume basically to the hiring manager without all of that information so that they can make a decision based on the resume alone without that unconscious or conscious bias. The same thing is true for the AI systems. If you remove that information from the equation, it mitigates significantly the bias risk. But then to move on as well, I do want to come back to the fact that it increases the opportunity for both candidates and recruiters. We are not physically capable as great of an experience as we like to think we give, and maybe as uniquely as a human can give. Maybe that's true. But what's unique too is we can't interview all the people who apply, and the AI can. And so, 20% of something's better than 100% of nothing in my mind. And this is what I think we need to get over. We need to get past the last thing of adoption is ourselves. We need to get over what we think is uniquely ours and we're uniquely capable of. This stinks. Like I've had to take the pill. AI is a better writer than me. That stinks, but it's the truth. I have to get over it. And what did I do? I used it to write for me. This is the way, as they would say. Like this is what you have to do.
You ever get
Accept it.
pushback of utilizing AI, like in the writing or prepping candidates or and any other
Yeah.
situations of saying, hey, they were prepped too hard or too good, or your writing's too good. I'm going to discredit you because you utilize technology.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
This is interesting, right? Like Hacker Rank, I talked to, or and some other places I've talked to. One of the dead giveaways that somebody's using AI is they score 100%. Now, you say you're a technology company. Don't you want the people, like, who cares if they're an engineer? And to me, this is the thing. This is actually the demonstration of capability of what it can do. Take an average software engineer and make them ace the software engineering exam. Isn't that the person you want? But some companies are saying, no, that's not the person we want. That's cheating. And it's like, you want your physicist to have a calculator or not? You can make them do the calculations on the chalkboard by hand, but you're not going to be winning any Nobel Prizes anytime soon. It's the same thing. It's a tool. This is the other kind of thing of adoption that psychologically I think we have to get past. It's very hard for us as humans to understand an intellect that doesn't have emotion or an ego. Everything that we interact with that's intelligent has some kind of emotion, and we're used to that. And we're used to those things being associated. But with AI, they're not. The AI has no ambition, has no jealousy, has no feelings. Um, it isn't waiting for you. It isn't thinking about you. You type something in, it executes a task, it shuts down. Like it's not thinking about the meaning of life. It doesn't feel jealous. And so this is we anthropomorphize things. And that kind of interferes with our ability to see clearly what's happening. And the truth of the matter is this is just a new power tool, right? This is a new capability that should empower people to be better, faster, and cheaper all simultaneously. And the thing about AI that makes it so sticking and so difficult to ignore is the speed. It is just so much faster than a person that no human could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week and keep up with the output that somebody, with an assistant AI can get through. And so, we're at this point where we have to adopt because there's no other choice.
You have been an expert in this field, the last couple of years. How did you get to be the expert of knowing what's going on the technology front? And what would you tell the other recruiters and sourcers within the community of how to learn from you and others within the industry of how to be an AI expert at their companies?
Right. For me, I have the book, The AI Recruiter. I will also be offering a 2-day boot camp with me to teach how to use AI in recruiting. So we'll go through pretty much A to Z of what I think you would need to know. What is AI? I think that's the very first thing to understand. And this, how I'm taking people down my learning path. The very first thing I started to research and try to understand and how I became an expert was I was first trying to understand what is it? and how does it work? Like, as far as, a non-engineer can understand, how does this thing work? Then I started to try and understand not just what was happening in TA, but I tried to look around and understand what was happening in the market. Like, what other technologies, what other industries, what other companies are being built that are powered with this technology. Some of it, we've all seen the Boston Dynamics robots, but not all of us have seen the new AI Devin, who's a software engineer, right? So trying to get a big picture once I understand what, and then I kind of have my Jurassic Park moment, right? Where you're so busy thinking about if you should do something or can you do something, you don't stop to think about if. And that was kind of the next evolution that'll be in my class. And that's kind of where I learned too, was I started to think about diversity and ethics and inclusion and belonging. And like, I wanted to understand how that impacted. I wanted to understand hallucinations. Like, once I understood what it was and who's using it, what are the challenges with it? And how do we mitigate those, and do the benefits outweigh the risks? And in some cases, I think maybe they don't. We talked about, you talked about kind of some of the things that aren't high risk, writing an email, writing a job description, a candidate interview prep. You're not really going to get in trouble for those. Candidate ranking, I would highly recommend against. Candidate matching, I think, is a solid middle ground. And that comes through thinking about what are the ethical implications and how does that impact diversity. And once you're like, okay, now I understand, then I go into, okay, so this thing is helping other people. There's a real thing here. What are the use cases for me? And then we talk about kind of the low hanging fruit, the low risk activities that you can do with AI. And then what are you know, what are kind of the more sophisticated, maybe potentially more risky use cases? Cool. I understand that. Now I know what I can use it for. Okay. So great. What are all the tools out there? What are all the LLMs out there? How do I understand what's available to me? Because right now I understand basically what I'm dealing with. I understand that this has a wide application across a broad range of industries. I understand what the challenges that are going to be facing me ethically, legally, and with diversity. I understand what I want to use it for. So now I'm going to go look for the best tool because I have all that information. And then I'm going to go look at the different LLMs. Candidly, they're getting closer and closer together. I think this is why OpenAI announced about a month ago they want to invest $7 trillion in chips. The open source LLMs are starting to catch up to the GPT-4s and Geminis of the world in capability and volume. So what are those tools? What are the capabilities? What is available to you? Then once you figure out what you're going to be using, the tools, then you need to learn prompt engineering. How do you get the best results consistently out of this particular model for these particular tasks? And then finally, the last thing I've been learning and the last thing I would be teaching is how do you actually build these tools for yourself? How do you build your own GPTs? Now that that's kind of the advanced stuff, but I think it's what we need because all of that other stuff is great, but you've got to be able to actually take it back and now apply it. And once you understand all of that, then as you're building your own tools, you're empowered because we can, right? You can program these things in whatever language you speak. You don't need to be a programmer. And from your own experience, you can give it examples. So with that capability, with that knowledge, you're then empowered to create the toolkit that you need that helps you as a recruiter, that helps you as a sourcer. And that's ultimately what I want to accomplish, not only in my training, but for anybody who's training. You don't have to go through me, but that's the path that I would take, regardless of who you're learning from. Once you're there, you're empowered. It's on the other side. Like my writing has become so much more enjoyable actually for me because I know that I'm going to be able to sit down and I'm going to be able to get my complete thought out on the page. And with my own GPT that I have the AI recruiter. Anybody with a GPT-4 subscription, you can see it in the GPT store. It is programmed with my persona. So all of my articles that I've written for SourceCon and Recruiting Daily over the years, I've uploaded those. I've uploaded a copy of my book. I've given it instructions on how to do different tasks. And now it's my assistant and it helps me write. It helped me write the book at first. And then I took the lessons and the prompts that I had learned from writing that book and I programmed those into my GPT that works just for me. And that to me is, I think, what the sourcers and recruiters of the future, they're going to be able to build their own toolkit on the fly as they need it.
Do you think one industry to the next industry is going to have more of an impact when people are utilizing AI? What industries do you think is going to be impacted, good, bad, or the
Yeah.
ugly, the most?
Oh, well, this is where my experience as an analyst comes in handy. Regardless of artificial intelligence or anything else, my answer would be the same. If I wanted to know how much a disruptive technology or a disruptor was going to affect any industry, I would look at two factors. I would look at the relative cost and the relative satisfaction. Now, I'm going to pick a big target here, something that most people are familiar with for the sake of an example. But if you stop and think about it and apply this thinking to your own industry or any industry you want to think about, the logic holds. The US healthcare industry, relatively speaking, it has the highest cost per person to provide healthcare. Satisfaction is in the 20s with that service. When you have a high relative cost and a low relative satisfaction, that is a signal for venture capitalists and entrepreneurs that this sector is ripe for disruption. What I would do is if I'm sitting in my field and I want to understand how AI is going to impact us, I would look at that. Are we expensive? And do people like us? Something that probably won't be impacted as much, car insurance, right? 99.98% of people renew their car insurance. They don't even think about it. It's on auto bill pay. Maybe they grumble a little bit about the price, but you got to have insurance. And there's very little product differentiation. So that's not an industry that I would expect to see a lot of disruption in. And your industry, wherever whatever you're listening to, probably somewhere between those two extremes. But if you can understand those 2 points of data, you can understand basically how big the impact of AI is going to be on your industry, and relatively speaking, how quickly that will come.
So another big topic that just got released is there is not going to be any non-compete clauses within organizations. How do you think that's going to change the landscape of recruiting and the available candidates on the market?
Yeah. So I think it's a win for the candidates for sure. I understand, like, there's still protections in place for companies. There's still NDAs, executives who make decisions and have trade secrets. Those are still valid. But I remember when I was an agency recruiter, I had a non-compete and it was very restrictive for me. It really limited my options as to what I could do. It basically kept me out of agency and going from going to another one. It wasn't possible for me and it closed a lot of doors. And from a contract perspective, that's really not fair. You can't say, because I've already paid you, now, that money I gave you to do a job also has this future value that prevents you from going and exploring your career fully because you can't go with one of my competitors. And that was really limiting to me. That really forced me into a decision when I was looking to leave agency. I couldn't go to another agency. There was actually a place I did want to go and I wasn't able to go. So it's a win for the average worker. As far as will it immediately shake things up? I think we'll see a buzz, a short term hit in candidate activity.
How
But
about in
though,
the AI space? You see a lot of every day there's a new company, an AI company, and an AI tool coming out within recruiting and these AI leaders, there's a ton of job postings. Do you think it's gonna help build some of those smaller companies because they have the flexibility and availability now to jump ship to another
yeah,
company?
yeah, it's really going to stir the pot. But look, it's like shuffling the deck. Every time you shuffle the deck, something new happens. And to me, like, the more connections you can make between people, especially smart people who have ideas and are driven. I mean, you're not talking about people who are sitting at home, watching TV. Like, these are ambitious people. They're trying to do something. Like, allow them to fulfill their potential. Allow them, we all do best when we're sharing. And so I think we'll see a boom in startups for sure. There's going to be a lot of talent that exits um, the FANG companies or however you want to call them these days, because the engineers, they have the resources, they have projects that they want to do. They're smart, they're engaged. And now the only thing that was really holding them back is this risk. You know,
For sure.
I went through the same path, and people asked me about a non-compete. And, now that that's not an issue, that's going to be one less thing in the way. And for those of you who don't like government, right? Like, this is actually great because it's one less thing. It's one less regulation. It's one less barrier between people and work. And overall, it'll be a good thing. I'm sure it'll get litigated. I'm sure it won't survive in its current form. But for the moment, this is a win for people. And I think it will increase the velocity of the startups. And it'll be interesting to hear like 2, 3, 5 years from now. Hey, I heard about the non-compete. I quit my job and I started Microsoft Googly,
For
and
sure.
that's where it
For
came
sure.
from. And we'll be like, oh, who could have ever known? Like, embracing non-compete's going to create the next $10 trillion company. But
As a TA leader within this space, how do you determine which AI tech stack for your recruiting team to choose from? There's a million out there. Any
right.
successes, and how do you determine that as a leader to determine which one you're going to go through?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the very first thing you have to understand is, what do you want to accomplish? And there needs to be multiple things to that. First, is this a time to fill? Is this cost per hire? Those are two different approaches. Are we a volume? Are we high touch, low volume, high value? These matter. If you are high volume, automation is going to pay off better for you. And that should be your focus, and tools that help you automate repetitive tasks. And then ask the vendors, who are your clients? Like, what are your use cases? Can you provide me with any information about how you affected my cared about metric? And so once you understand what you want to accomplish and what metric and what needle you're trying to move, then you can focus. If you're talking about high value, low volume type of recruiting positions or functionality, then your AI should be about bespoke experiences, right? The chatbot knows your name and it's available to you 24/7 on your phone, right? Whatever. Then that should be the focus. It should be on providing the experience, um, and the information in that case. So those are probably either ROI conversations where you're looking to drop the cost per hire. This is where phone screeners come into handy, video interviewers, things that can handle very specific technical tasks that you can't just program a GPT to do. And those would provide value in that type of organization. Because if you're going to say, hey, we're a cutting edge technology company, you probably should be using some cutting edge technology.
Let's move to the quick fire questions. We have a couple more minutes. What advice would you give to brand new recruiters starting the field in 2024?
Right. The very first thing I would suggest is, don't forget the basics. Like, it can be easy to go the shiny, like, button new thing, but learn how to schedule your day, learn how to take notes, find a mentor, find somebody who's been at this profession a while, offer them your help in exchange for their information, their help. Read. When I was the sourcing manager at Twitter, every week, somebody was assigned to read something because there's so much going on all the time. It is impossible to keep up. That doesn't mean you shouldn't know and be competent and read about how to do your job. Ask for training. If you don't get it, offer it. One of the things I think was very successful for our team at Twitter is we trained every single week. We had 30 minutes of teen time, and we had a TED Talk style training. So 8 to 12 minutes. Somebody from the team gave that training, and it was on a topic that was relevant to us. Every serious professional trains. Professional athletes practice. Surgeons practice. The military, they practice all the time. Why is the United States military so good? They practice all the time. If you're a serious professional and you want to be a serious professional, practice, read.
I love that. At Hire Easy, building out the Outbound Recruiting Academy, it's 100% free for the practitioners to practice your craft every single day because there's new knowledge coming into the industry. And the best people are the ones that are getting ahead of the game and practicing. I love that. Is there somebody or a couple individuals that come to mind that's really reshaped your career success?
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to meet Jerry Crispin early in my career. I remember meeting him after he had just spoken, and I was at a conference. I was trying to learn, and he was talking about candidate experience. And he didn't introduce himself as the CEO or whatever. He's just like, "Hi, I'm Jerry, eternal student." So I'm like, "Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from da 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 da." Da." Like, "Oh, hi, I'm Jerry. I'm eternal student." That stuck with me, and he's been gracious with his time for me over the years. He has definitely been an influence. The other person I followed, who's had an influence on my career is Glenn Cathy. Early on in my career, I started to read his work, and like he challenged me. He was the first person to say, like, here's a problem. Here's what I think you can do, but there's probably other ways to fix this. I don't know what others, but this is one solution. And I was like, well, wait, that was very different from what I'd read before. Like it was one story, one solution, one problem. I fixed it. I'm the hero. This is the end. But he would write and he would be like, I did this, I got this outcome. I think this is what's going on. And I think this is the way to fix it. And, it definitely had an influence. I remember I read a series of articles that he did on just in time recruiting. And he talked about thinking about our profession like a manufacturing process. And I'd never thought of it in those terms before. And seeing it through that lens definitely impacted the way I viewed my own job and how I approached the challenges I was facing. So those are two people in the industry I definitely um, owe something to.
Is there somebody, a rising star within the recruiting community right now that you're really taking notice of because they're doing it a different way? You're seeing them on social media that you're really happy to see the next wave of recruiters taking ownership.
Yeah. So a lot of these tech startups and AI right now are being led kind of by the next generation of leaders. Robin Choi is somebody I follow and talk to on occasion. And it's because he has his own CRM company, AI powered, that's full disclosure. But when he's speaking about AI, he also talks about how he's like, here's how I programmed my GPT. Here's how I did this. Here's how I did that. And that is really the type of leadership I think we need. We need explanations of how. And I see him as a rising voice inside of AI. Um, as far as other voices, like this is the nice thing about it. There are um, several right now, and it's really about what area of focus do you want to to be in. But as far as I know, this is and my call to you would be this is the time to engage. Like right now, we see a lot of new podcasts, we see a lot of new voices rising, and that's a good thing. That's actually what we need right now. We have a lot of communities that aren't connected, that are kind of isolated in space. And the more of this that we have and the more of this that we do, the more and more chances we have to connect with those different audiences and become a bigger and broader TA community as a whole. And that's something that we need right now. So to me, if you're sitting here thinking like, there's maybe it's my turn, I would encourage you. Yeah. Right now is the time for the next generation of leaders to step forward and say, you know what? I know how to build these tools. I know how to use them, and I'm going to show you.
Any closing thoughts? Anything else that you want to share with the audience? It could be a valuable lesson, something that you learned, recent development in the industry, or an
Oh,
inspiring word to
yeah.
leave with us.
I will leave you with an inspiring word. How about that? I was watching a TED Talk last night by Mustafa Suleiman, who is the CEO of Microsoft AI. And he said, AI is to the mind what nuclear fission is to energy, limitless, abundant, and world changing.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Mike, for joining the SpeakEZ podcast. To the audience, I will put in the show notes his upcoming event where you can dive in deep and work with Mike personally on your AI adventure moving forward. I also attach his books. Make sure you check it out. We just are so blessed to have him be a part of this. So thank you so much, Mike, for doing this. To the audience, feel free to get involved. Take that leap of faith, like Mike challenged us. Sign up for the Hire Easy community, the Outbound Recruiting Academy, and really just embrace the opportunity to connect with each other. So thanks again, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.